Good evening. It is Monday, November 27th, 2023. I'm Jeffrey Whitten. This is the Recreations and Parks Committee. I'm joined by Mr. Roselle and Mr. Schilling here tonight. We're here to discuss a memorandum of understanding. We will be looking at giving away some parkland to Troy City Schools after their recent victory in the November election to build some new schools. Mr. Tarrington.
Mr. Chair, thank you. So this is a memorandum of understanding. This is related to the newly passed new school building project. This is something that was discussed a couple of years ago, the first time that the schools, one of the earlier times, I guess, the schools attempted to pass a levy. It's been discussed thoroughly by the Park Board, and the Park Board does, in fact, recommend Council's approval to authorize me to co-sign this along with the President of the Board of Commissioners as well as the Troy City School Superintendent. Regarding the Memorandum of Understanding, this is an MOU, which is an intent, so you would see some specific legislation when it came time to actually do the transfers. Part of this MOU is to create an interagency operating agreement that talks about the future interrelationship that we have always had but never really documented well, not only speaking of the properties that are involved in this MOU, but also other facilities that we share with schools. So that would come at a later date, but this MOU would do several things. We would, as part of this, convey to the schools no later than the end of 2024 the properties known as Hook and Campbell Parks, approximately 8¼ acres. That would allow them to do the building of the new structures on that property, on those properties which will remain and be used for their new school facilities. In return, the schools will provide, and so we will be losing 4 ball fields. Those are primarily baseball field parks with other open space as well. So the schools will provide 4 to 6 ball fields in return on their new properties, 1 at Cookson, 1 at Hook, 1 to 2 at the McCaig-Arthur Road site, which is the West Elementary School, generic name at this point, and then 1 to 2 at the South Middle School, which is the Swales Road site. As part of this project, at the end, once they have everybody, the buildings built out, and they abandon Van Cleve, Haywood, and Kyle, as part of this project, they will demolish those structures and transfer those over to the city. I would envision that the council would transfer those over to the CIC so that they can facilitate redevelopment of those properties based on our long-range plan, our economic development needs, as well as the new comprehensive plan, which should be in place by then. Those are the highlights of that MOU, and we are not asking for, are we asking for emergency? Mm-hmm. We are asking for emergency legislation.
Mr. Roselle, any questions?
The swap is basically the same swap that they were going to do 2 and 3 years ago?
Yes, it is.
Mr. Schilling?
Yeah, a couple of questions. It was once explained to me that the only way that the Park Board or the City of Troy could dispose of park property was to ask the Park Board to do that, and the only way that they could do it would be declare that the property was no longer of use or
Surplus.
Pardon?
Surplus. Surplus?
He said that.
Yeah, surplus. And then it would go out to bid, and the highest bidder would then be able to take purchase the property.
So there,
So we're not doing this, and that was explained to me, that was the only way that we could dispose of surplus park property.
that is the only way in 99.9% of the cases with any kind of property that we have. There is a specific exemption or allowance in the ORC, and that relates to the relationship between us and the schools. So they specifically mention the schools as one that we can do a direct transfer.
Okay.
But this is not, nobody's deeming this as surplus, correct?
I think Mr. Kerber's in the audience, but...
Is this
I mean,
technically-
however we declare it, we can transfer the property
Yeah.
over to the schools. I imagine it technically is surplus property, otherwise we would say, no, we really need those two parks. Nonetheless, we do not have to follow that process that you're speaking of, Mr. Schilling, because we are working with the schools.
Accurate?
Mr. Rozell, to
Accurate.
answer your question, yes.
Okay.
There is a provision that says that property can be conveyed to the school for school purposes.
Yeah, I'm not problem,
And,
I'm just,
yeah,
my question,
so you're not going through that declaring a surplus process.
which would get the answer to Jeff's question.
Correct.
Okay. And then so we're essentially losing, 8 acres of parkland, and we're gonna use that to, not saying that it won't go back to parkland, but the probability is that it will be developed to something else. I mean, in other words, the properties that we get are not gonna be converted back to parkland, they're going to be converted into something else.
We'll evaluate each property and what's around and what the economic development plans. I don't envision that all 3 properties will be converted to parkland, no.
Okay.
I wouldn't, and I wouldn't anticipate you're developing Cookson and Hook, because you're smack dab right next to a school. I
Well,
mean,
we wouldn't be doing that
Yeah.
because we would be transferring, we wouldn't own those 2 properties
well,
anymore.
with
But-
coming back in return.
Well, I think what you're talking about is Van Cleve, Kyle, and
Haywood.
Haywood,
properties.
correct.
Each one of those, we may have different ideas for each one.
Okay. And then, the question I had is that under what I had read about the school building process is that my general understanding was that the schools first had to offer those properties that they were giving us in return. They first had to offer those properties to nonprofits, and then there was like a list of before they could. I mean, am I right? Am I clearly wrong on that, or what? I mean, so I guess the question is, how do we know we're going to get the property back? Could a nonprofit step in front of us and say, hey, we want that building?
I believe that's part of the same exemption that we talked about earlier, and it's a direct transfer between the schools and the city. It's
Okay, so it applies both ways on that
yes.
then?
Correct.
Because in one case, the city is transferring property to the schools, and then the other side, the school is getting rid of properties, and my question is
Well,
that...
they're transferring properties to us, so it's a quid pro quo.
Yeah, but I guess the question is that, from our side, we can give stuff to the schools, but the other question is, can the schools, they have the same ability to give stuff to us?
Yes.
Okay, all right.
And you're technically correct. Historically, they have to offer the charters and nonprofits before they tear them down. So if
Right.
they've already torn down, they've already done that process,
Okay,
hopefully.
hopefully. All right, that's no other questions.
I had kind of more of a statement I wanted to make about the transfer of the parkland here. I am in favor of moving this forward. I think it's, the schools are a valuable part of Troy, and this has been a long time coming. But what I wanted to bring up was just the distribution of parkland in the city. It's kind of been something I've been noticing since day one on council. And I just want to bring up a few facts. Some of these numbers may be a little off. The maps I was looking at could be a little off. There are 29 total parks in Troy, 7 in the 2nd Ward, 8 in the 5th, 4 in the 6th, 3 apiece in the 3rd and the 4th, and 1 in the 1st Ward, and we're going to vote to get rid of that one tonight. Is it possible to submit to the park board a plan to try to come up with a future idea to put a park in the first ward, at least on the northeast side of Troy?
Well, I don't know, I don't know what the process specifically would be. Anytime that they look at and evaluate any really kind of property that doesn't have any other use besides open space, that is a consideration as to what we have and what we don't have. As we look at, primarily when we look at new subdivisions, because they have the green space. Now, I will say that as part of the comprehensive plan update, there is a park and recreation component. They're taking a close look at the parks and the open space and the green space and where it's, you know, how it's scattered around Troy. And so certainly as we move forward and the park board for, you know, every time there's a subdivision that is contemplated by council and the planning commission, it has to go to the park board as one of the first steps to do, for them to decide whether they want payment, fees in lieu of parkland or additional parkland. They do consider what's around that particular subdivision, and if there isn't anything, that's where they would say, well, okay, we really would want the public space and we want X, Y, and Z, as opposed to the payments in lieu of.
Yeah. So obviously, on the northwest or northeast side of Troy, there's not going to be a lot of land available that we have right now to put a park in. I know we have had, it's already in the city, development that I think when COVID hit, that kind of went to the side. I'm not sure of that development. Mr. Attorney, you might know that, up in the first ward, that they had plans to put one up there. Up towards the- yeah, but that has went away since.
Have we, I know we saw a version of that, is that still valid, or are they coming back with new?
It expired, they'll be coming back.
I'm sorry, could you repeat that?
So they, Liberty Meadows had a plan in place. That plan has expired.
Yeah.
And so they will be coming back through the process again, and that's something that can be discussed at that time.
All right, that's all I would ask for. Are there any other councilmen who have any questions? Anyone in the audience? Mr. Pierce?
Samuel Pierce, City Councilman, Troy. Who is responsible for maintaining the cutting of the grass on these ball fields? Because at Forest, they really don't do a fabulous job when school's not in season, during the summertime, of keeping the grass cut. And if we're going to have ball fields, we definitely do want to make sure that the grass remains cut for them.
Schools.
Where the ball fields are, that'll be part of what we better define in the interagency operating agreement that I mentioned earlier. I know that we have a cooperative agreement with the schools, and there are certain times when our staff will do the maintenance primarily after the school year versus during the school year, and it'll vary by location.
All right, thank you.
Any other comments? Mr. Roselle, what is your recommendation?
Move forward.
With emergency?
Yeah.
It is unanimous to move forward with emergency. Is there anything else to come before the committee?
Yes, sir.
We are adjourned.